There's something unsettling about the way some people seem to carry an invisible weight from the moment they draw their first breath. While others dance through life with apparent ease, these individuals appear marked by an inexplicable burden, as if fate itself has singled them out for a different kind of existence. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, had a profound insight about this phenomenon. He believed that those destined for greatness, those who would eventually transform not only their own lives, but the lives of countless others, often begin their journey in the depths of suffering. But here's what's truly remarkable. Jung didn't see this suffering as a curse or a cosmic joke. Instead, he viewed it as a sacred initiation, a necessary forging process that transforms ordinary souls into extraordinary beings. Today, we're going to explore one of Jung's most profound and controversial ideas, that the chosen ones, those destined to become healers, leaders, and transformers of humanity, must first be wounded. They must first descend into the darkness before they can emerge as bearers of light. If you've ever felt like you were carrying more than your fair share of life's burdens, if you've wondered why some people seem to attract struggle while others float through existence relatively unscathed, then this exploration of Jung's philosophy might just change how you see your own journey. Because what if I told you that your suffering wasn't meaningless? What if it was actually the universe's way of preparing you for something extraordinary? Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But for the chosen ones, this privilege comes at a cost. It demands that they first lose themselves completely, that they be broken down and rebuilt from the ground up. It's a process that begins long before they understand what's happening to them, often manifesting in childhood through experiences that seem to set them apart from their peers." Think about the great figures throughout history, the mystics, the revolutionary thinkers, the artists who changed the world, the leaders who transformed societies. How many of them had what we would call normal childhoods? How many grew up in circumstances that forced them to confront the darker aspects of human existence before they were even old enough to understand what they were witnessing? From Buddha's encounter with suffering that led him to seek enlightenment, to Jesus's early awareness of his divine mission, to more recent figures like Nelson Mandela, who faced oppression from birth, or Maya Angelou, who overcame tremendous childhood trauma to become one of the most influential voices of her generation. This pattern isn't coincidental. Jung understood that consciousness, true deep consciousness, is forged in the fires of adversity. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, he observed. But for the chosen ones, this irritation, this friction with the world, begins early and runs deep. They seem to be born with a heightened sensitivity to the world's pain, an inability to turn away from what others might prefer to ignore. The concept of the wounded healer is central to Jung's understanding of how transformation occurs. He recognized that those who would eventually guide others through their darkest moments must first navigate their own psychological underworld. The wounded healer, this archetypal figure, appears across cultures and throughout history, from the Greek god Chiron, who could heal others but not himself, to the shamanic traditions where the healer's power comes directly from their own encounter with illness and recovery. Jung himself was a perfect example of this principle. His own psychological crisis, which he called his confrontation with the unconscious, lasted for several years and brought him to the brink of what others might have considered madness. During this period, he experienced vivid hallucinations, heard voices, and felt as though he was losing his grip on reality. But rather than being destroyed by these experiences, Jung used them as raw material for his revolutionary understanding of the human psyche. His suffering became the foundation for insights that would help millions of people understand their own psychological struggles. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, Jung wrote. For the chosen ones, this acceptance doesn't come easily or early. They often spend years, sometimes decades, feeling like strangers in their own lives, as if they're wearing a costume that doesn't quite fit. This sense of alienation isn't a bug in their system, it's a feature. It's what drives them to look deeper, to question assumptions that others take for granted, to seek meaning in places where others see only chaos. The suffering of the chosen ones serves multiple purposes in Jung's framework. First, it breaks down the ego's natural defenses, creating cracks through which deeper wisdom can enter. When we're comfortable and secure, we rarely question the nature of reality or our place within it. But when we're forced to confront pain, loss, or trauma, we begin to ask the fundamental questions that lead to genuine insight. Why am I here? What is the meaning of suffering? How can I make sense of a world that seems so often cruel and arbitrary? Second, this early suffering develops what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox and tension without immediately rushing to resolve it. Most people, when faced with contradiction or ambiguity, quickly choose one side or the other. But the chosen ones, through their prolonged exposure to life's contradictions, develop a capacity to sit with uncertainty, to find meaning in the spaces between opposites. This ability becomes crucial later when they're called upon to help others navigate their own contradictions and complexities. Jung observed that your visions become clear when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The chosen ones are forced to look inside from an early age, not by choice but by circumstance. Their suffering creates a kind of internal pressure that eventually forces them to turn inward, to begin the process of what Jung called individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming one's authentic self. But here's where Jung's insight becomes particularly profound. He recognized that this process of individuation isn't just personal. When someone completes their own psychological healing, when they integrate their shadow and emerge whole from their ordeal, they don't just heal themselves, they become a healing presence for others. Their very existence becomes a proof of possibility, a living demonstration that transformation is real and achievable. This is why Jung believed that the chosen ones must suffer first. Not because suffering is inherently valuable, but because the particular kind of wisdom needed to guide others through their own transformations can only be earned through direct experience. You cannot fake the deep knowing that comes from having walked through the valley of the shadow of death and emerged on the other side. You cannot pretend to understand the hero's journey if you've never been the hero of your own story, complete with the descent into darkness that every hero must undergo. The chosen ones often report feeling like they're living multiple lives simultaneously. On the surface, they may appear to be struggling, failing, or simply unable to get their act together in the way that others seem to manage so effortlessly. But beneath this surface confusion, a deeper process is at work. They're being prepared for something, though they usually don't know what. They're being given experiences that will later become the raw material for their unique contribution to the world. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." This choice, to transform suffering into wisdom, to alchemize pain into purpose, is what distinguishes the chosen ones from those who remain trapped in victimhood. It's not that they don't experience genuine trauma or face real challenges. Rather, they eventually learn to see these experiences as initiations rather than punishments, as necessary steps in their development rather than random cruelties. The timing of this realization varies greatly from person to person. Some chosen ones recognize their calling early and begin consciously working with their suffering as a transformative force. Others may spend decades feeling lost, confused, or broken before they begin to see the pattern in their pain. Jung himself didn't fully understand his own psychological crisis until years after it had ended, when he could look back and see how it had prepared him for his life's work. This process of transformation is rarely linear or predictable. The chosen ones often find themselves cycling through periods of breakdown and breakthrough, descent and ascent, death and rebirth. Each cycle takes them deeper into their own truth and simultaneously prepares them to be of greater service to others. Jung called this the spiral path, a journey that seems to circle back on itself but actually moves progressively upward, with each return to familiar territory occurring at a higher level of consciousness. One of the most challenging aspects of being chosen is the loneliness that often accompanies the early stages of the journey. When you're going through experiences that your peers can't relate to, when you're asking questions that others haven't yet learned to ask, when you're feeling depths of emotion that seem to overwhelm everyone around you, it's natural to feel isolated and misunderstood. Jung understood this isolation intimately. "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are," he wrote. But he also acknowledged that this privilege often comes with the price of temporary alienation from the collective. The chosen ones frequently report feeling like they're from another planet, like they don't quite belong in the world they've been born into. This sense of otherworldliness isn't a delusion. It's actually a reflection of their destiny to serve as bridges between different levels of consciousness, to translate insights from the depths of the psyche into language that others can understand. And Jung believed that every generation produces individuals who are specifically equipped to help humanity navigate its current challenges. These people don't choose their role. They're chosen for it, often through circumstances that seem to single them out for particular forms of suffering or difficulty. The child who grows up in a dysfunctional family system learns early how to navigate chaos and help others find stability. The young person who battles depression or anxiety develops an intimate understanding of the human condition that later enables them to guide others through similar struggles. The individual who faces discrimination or prejudice gains insights into justice and compassion that can transform entire communities. But the path from suffering to service is never automatic. Jung emphasized that the chosen ones must actively engage with their experiences, must choose to see them as meaningful rather than random, must commit to the hard work of transformation rather than simply hoping that time will heal all wounds. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, he wrote, but this understanding doesn't come without effort. The process Jung described involves what he called active imagination, the practice of engaging consciously with the contents of the unconscious mind. For the chosen ones, this often means befriending their own darkness, learning to see their symptoms as messages rather than problems, and developing a relationship with their suffering that transforms it from an enemy into an ally. This isn't about romanticizing pain or seeking out trauma, but about learning to work with whatever life has already provided as raw material for growth. Jung observed that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. For the chosen ones, this cave is often the very suffering they've been trying to escape. The depression they've been fighting may contain insights into the nature of hope. The anxiety they've been medicating may hold information about their true calling. The trauma they've been trying to forget may be the source of their greatest strength and compassion. This doesn't mean that the chosen ones should avoid healing or refuse help when they need it. Rather, it means that their healing process itself becomes part of their preparation for service. Every therapy session, every moment of breakthrough, every small victory over their own darkness becomes practice for the work they'll eventually do with others. They're not just healing themselves, they're learning how healing works from the inside out. The chosen ones often find that their greatest wounds become their greatest gifts. The person who struggled with addiction becomes a powerful advocate for recovery. The individual who battled mental illness becomes a compassionate therapist or counselor. The child who grew up in poverty becomes a social worker or educator dedicated to helping others escape similar circumstances. The pattern is so consistent that Jung came to see it as a fundamental law of psychological development. We are wounded in the place where we will eventually become healers. But this transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always obvious even to the chosen ones themselves. They may spend years feeling like victims of their circumstances, wondering why they seem to attract more than their share of difficulty. They may compare themselves to others who seem to have easier lives and wonder what they did wrong to deserve such challenges. This phase of the journey is natural and necessary. It's the dark night of the soul that precedes the dawn of understanding. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." The chosen ones are eventually forced to look inside, not by choice, but by the sheer weight of their external circumstances. When the outer world fails to provide answers or relief, they have no choice but to turn inward. This inward turn is often precipitated by what Jung called the dark night of the soul, a period of intense spiritual crisis that forces a complete re-evaluation of one's life and purpose. During this dark night, everything that once seemed certain becomes questionable. The roles, relationships, and beliefs that once provided structure and meaning begin to feel hollow or false. The chosen ones often describe this period as feeling like they're dying, and in a sense, they are. The person they thought they were is dying to make room for the person they're becoming. This psychological death is often more painful than physical death because it involves the dissolution of everything they've used to define themselves. But just as the mythological phoenix must burn before it can rise from its own ashes, the chosen ones must experience this ego death before they can be reborn into their true purpose. Jung understood that this process, while painful, is ultimately creative. It's the universe's way of clearing away everything that isn't essential so that what remains can shine with pure authenticity. The chosen ones often report that their darkest moments are followed by their greatest breakthroughs. Just when they think they can't take any more, just when they're ready to give up completely, something shifts. A new understanding emerges, a door opens, a path becomes clear. This isn't coincidence. It's the natural rhythm of transformation. Jung called this the enantiodromia, the tendency for things to transform into their opposites when they reach their extreme. The deepest darkness gives way to the brightest light. As the chosen ones begin to emerge from their own psychological underworld, they often find that their suffering has given them capabilities they never knew they possessed. They can hold space for others' pain without being overwhelmed by it. They can see hope in situations that appear hopeless. They can offer comfort that actually comforts because it comes from someone who has genuinely walked through similar darkness and found their way back to the light. Jung believed that this process of transformation through suffering is not just personal, but collective. When someone completes their own individuation process, when they successfully integrate their shadow and emerge whole from their ordeal, they don't just heal themselves, they contribute to the healing of the entire human collective. Their very existence becomes a proof of possibility, a living demonstration that transformation is real and achievable. This is why Jung saw the chosen ones as essential to human evolution. They serve as scouts, going ahead into the darkness to map the territory and then returning to guide others along the path. They're the ones who prove that what seems impossible is actually just difficult, that what appears to be the end is often just the beginning of something new. The chosen ones. carry within them the seeds of humanity's next evolutionary leap. Their suffering prepares them to be midwives for the birth of new consciousness, to help others navigate the transitions that they themselves have already undergone. They become living bridges between what was and what is becoming, between the old world that is dying and the new world that is struggling to be born. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For the chosen ones, this privilege is earned through the crucible of suffering, through the willingness to descend into their own darkness and emerge transformed. Their journey from woundedness to wholeness becomes a template that others can follow, a proof that the impossible is possible, that the human spirit is capable of incredible resilience and transformation. In the end, Jung's insight about the chosen ones suffering from birth is both a comfort and a challenge. It's a comfort because it suggests that our struggles have meaning, that our pain serves a purpose, that we're not victims of random cruelty, but participants in a sacred process of becoming. It's a challenge because it asks us to take responsibility for our transformation, to stop seeing ourselves as victims and start seeing ourselves as heroes on a journey of evolution. The chosen ones don't suffer because they're unlucky or cursed. They suffer because they're being prepared for something extraordinary. Their pain is not punishment, but initiation, not evidence of their failure, but proof of their calling. And when they finally emerge from their own psychological underworld, they carry with them the most precious gift of all, the lived knowledge that transformation is possible, that hope is real, and that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn. This is Jung's profound gift to us, the understanding that our wounds are not just scars, but sacred markings, that our suffering is not just pain, but preparation, and that our journey through darkness is not just an ordeal, but an initiation into the most important work of all, the work of becoming fully human and helping others do the same.